And it's interesting with the physical evidence, like like Gobekli Tepe, which is 11,600 years old. I mean, it used to be argued. Robert Schoch and John Anthony West's work on the Great Sphinx, suggesting that the Sphinx could be 12,000 plus years old. It used to be argued that was impossible because there was no other site anywhere in the world, no other megalithic site of the same age. And then we discover Gobekli Tepe, and it's 11,600 years old. Now, if you can make Gobekli Tepe with its 20-ton megaliths, beautifully carved representations of human and animal figures in those pillars, if you can do that, you can cut the Great Sphinx out of bedrock as well. There's no reason to dismiss the geological evidence of the Great Sphinx anymore, but instead, what archaeology is doing is trying to finesse Gobekli Tepe. They're trying to say, oh, there was this gradual build-up to Gobekli Tepe, and they now talk about a people who they call the Natufians. Again, we don't know what they called themselves, who were predecessors of Gobekli Tepe around 14,000 years ago. And they show things that look like a tiny little stone wall that they built, the sort of thing that you can find, a dry stone wall that you can find anywhere in Wales to this day, you know. And this is supposed to be a prequel to Gobekli Tepe. I'm sorry, you just don't start off making dry stone walls and then wake up one morning and create 20-ton megaliths in huge stone circles, perfectly astronomically aligned, as we have at Gobekli Tepe.
Not only that, but how? Like, what did they do? Where are you getting those 20-ton megaliths from? How far do they have to transport?
In the case of Gobekli Tepe, not far.
How far?
Hundreds of meters. I've stood on top of one megalith that they partially cut out of the bedrock with the T-shape, but then they found a fault in it and they left it there. It would have been a 30-ton megalith. They clearly intended to release it from the bedrock, but it had a fault, so they left it alone. The quarries, the issue of the quarries for the rock at Gobekli Tepe is not too big a problem.
But the transportation of those?
Even the transportation, you get enough people working together, and they can move large stones. That's not in dispute. But that's where the question comes. How do you get enough people together? How do you have the organizational skills? Where do you have the mindset that plans something like this at the beginning? And that is the problem that is not answered in the case of Gobekli Tepe, that happening suddenly.
And what were they using for tools?
They're supposed to have just been using stone. There's not supposed to have been any metals at that period. Enormous megalithic architecture and a shift from hunter-gathering to agriculture. And what Gobekli Tepe looks like to me is a transfer of technology, that people who already knew how to work megalithic architecture and align it precisely to the risings of particular stars, for example, Sirius, came to Gobekli Tepe at a time of chaos and cataclysm in the world, and they sought to introduce a new way of thinking. I think Gobekli Tepe was created as a project to mobilize the local community, to give them something to work on, to bring them together. And it's not an accident that during that 1,000 years they transitioned from hunter-gathering to agriculture.